Hey folks, Mark back with another vinyl update. This is part 2 of the video I just made. Things I picked up over the last 6 months. I've listened to them all, ripped them to MP3, put them on my phone in my digital player, and now I'm ready to file them away and tell you a little bit about them. And again, this is stuff I've picked up in record stores here in Cleveland and in other cities, at record shows, online, or at actual shows I went to. So it's a mixed bag here, definitely a mixed bag. So let's get started. This is one by the Suicide Romeo. Suicide Romeo is the group. They're from France. This is on the ZE label, subsidiary of Island Records. And it's just good new wave from the early 1980s out of France. New wave rhythms with a lot of guitar thrown in. Here's Gravity Wax, a band out of Dearborn, Michigan. And I have some of their 7 inches that they put out during the 1990s. Kind of a mix of Stereolab meets Sebadoh. Kind of a folky electronic kind of vibe to them with a psychedelic feel. And this is a 10-inch EP they put out called Acoustically Inert Dense Gravity Mechanism. Gravity Wax. Good stuff. I love them. Here's their laid-back reggae album from Ika Mouse called Wa Du Dem from 1981 on the Greensleeves label. Ika Mouse. Now here's a split 12-inch by Whir and Nothing, 2 modern-day noise rock bands. My Bloody Valentine, think that, but a little bit harder. And you're getting into Nothing and Whir territory. Great live. Nothing opened up for Torch. I saw them a week ago and just blew me away. Loved them. And Whir are coming through town in about a week, so I'll be checking them out as well. But this is a split 12-inch they did together, and it comes with a DVD. Bought this at the show. Here's a band called Young Widows that I've fallen for recently. They're from out of Louisville, Kentucky. And they do harder-edged rock, real rhythmic rock. Think Torch, groups like that. Not really metal, but pretty heavy stuff. Post-hardcore would almost be a way to describe them. This is an album they did most recently called Easy Pain. And then I also picked up their first album called Settle Down Cities, Young Widows. If you ever get a chance to catch them live and you like powerful, abrasive rock, you will definitely like these guys. And then here's a split 12-inch they did with another band called Helms Ali, which came out on really pretty vinyl. I'll show you the vinyl. Look at that. Isn't that cool? Love that stuff. I never know about the sound quality of these things. It sounded fine to me, but I always wonder, with these pretty new splatter vinyls, how they... Oh, I said vinyls. I can't believe I said that. The splattered vinyl out there, I always wonder how good the sound quality is, but... if somebody has a story or a good or bad experience with that, leave me a comment and let me know. All right, so here's another one. This is Artery, a band out of Sheffield, a post-punk band, an album they did called One Afternoon in a Hot Air Balloon. This came out in 1983. Doomy post-punk with a kind of a moody sort of feel to it. Here's a 12-inch by China Crisis called St. Savior Square from 1989. I kind of had checked out of China Crisis at this point. I really liked their first 2 albums the best. They were getting a little bit adult contemporary sounding for me at this point, but I do like this song, St. Savior Square, and I found the 12-inch for cheap, and it sounded really good. I was surprised. I liked it a lot more than I thought I would. Here's a split album by Controlled Bleeding, experimental band from the mid-1980s called Halved, and it's a split with a band called Maybe Mental. And the first, the reason I bought it was because of Controlled Bleeding. Later they signed to Wax Trax and put out material that was a lot more of the dance variety. This is a lot more moody, a lot more atmospheric, and almost creepy in a way. Almost nightmarish, but I like it. And this came out in 1985, Controlled Bleeding. Here's a jangly 12-string, birdsy, psychedelic-y pop band from somewhere on the east. I can't remember exactly where they're from. I want to say North Carolina, but I could easily be wrong there. The Young Sinclairs, they played Austin Psych Fest last year, and I'd heard them before then. I'd heard some 7 inches by them. Really fell for them. I love that birdsy, early REM kind of sound, and they've got it in spades and great melodies as well. The Young Sinclairs. Here's another album they did more recently called This Is The Young Sinclairs. Again, great stuff. If you like Rickenbacker 12-string guitars, this is right up your alley. Cheesy dance pop from the late 1980s, from 1987 by Celly B. It's called I Can't Let Go. Got this for cheap. Look at the way she's holding that microphone. She's just looking like she's just, I don't know, like she's overwhelmed with bad, cheesy 80s pop, and I just love it. Think Expose, and you're getting in the right area. Just club pop from the late 1980s. I Can't Let Go, Celly B. Natty Locks Dub, if you're in the mood for laid-back reggae, and with a dub style, pick up Natty Locks Dub. This is just mellowed out. Check it out. Put this on about 1 a.m. or midnight, and you'll be ready for sleep. Now, I've really been into Tackhead and trying to catch up on their stuff that I've never picked up back in the 80s. Bought a lot of stuff in the 80s by them, but missed out on this one. What's My Mission Now from Tackhead, a collective of people like Adrian Sherwood, Keith LeBlanc, Doug Wimbish, Gary Clayle. All of these people kind of came and went from Tackhead and put out a lot of 12 inches with hard, fast, funky beats and rhythms. Really, really dig them, and the stuff's dated remarkably well. And one of the guys from the Tackhead sound system, Gary Clayle, did an album called End of the Century Party on the On You Sound system, on the On You Sound record label, which is run by Adrian Sherwood. So this is really a collaboration between Adrian Sherwood and Gary Clayle. Again, if you like Tackhead, you'll like this. Great stuff. Band out of Germany from the early 1980s, sort of contemporaries of DAF and definitely foreshadowing the electronic body music movement of the late 1980s. Bands like Front 242 and Nitzer Ebb is De Krups. As a matter of fact, they did a 12-inch with Nitzer Ebb later on called Machineries of Joy. And this is an album they did in 1982 called, I'm going to butcher this, Volle Kraft Voros. Came out on the Wea label. It's De Krups from 1982, early minimal synth. Here's a 12-inch they put out shortly after that called Goldfinger, De Krups. Check them out. Good stuff. I like them. Here's something from John Cale called Animal Justice. And can't really tell you too much about it, but I've been trying to pick up more John Cale solo stuff. I do have Helen of Troy, and I've got Paris 1919, but that's about all I've got by him. So I'm kind of looking to build my collection up a little bit of his stuff. If you've got any good suggestions of an album to pick up, leave me a comment. Let me know which direction to go in with him. Indoor Life, I mentioned them in the previous video. They were on that Bay Area Bart compilation that Dark Entries put out. This is an EP they did in the mid-1980s on the Relativity label. And it's just synth pop from the mid-1980s. Nothing too, unique about it or bad about it, but it's enjoyable. I believe they're from San Francisco. So if you take a look at their haircuts, that's exactly what they sound like. Some bands you just know. You know what you're in for just by looking at them. And they definitely have that kind of synth pop sound. Here's a group, actually, it's singer Gabi Delgado Lopez. I was talking about DAF earlier. He was one half of DAF. The other half being Robert Gorel. And Gabi Delgado put out this 12-inch, History of a Kiss, 1984. It came from his album Mistress, his only solo album that I know of. His partner in crime, Robert Gorel, did an album in 1984 called A Night Full of Tension, which is great minimal synth stuff as well. Some post-punk from Atlanta, Georgia, from the Method Actors. Here's a live EP called Live in a Room. If you like things like Delta 5, Gang of Four, Bush Tetras, Pylon, you're in for a treat with the Method Actors. Angular, jagged post-punk. 1982. Here's a nice 12-inch I never knew existed by Metro. It's called America in My Head. Metro being lead singer being Peter Godwin, who later broke off and had some new wave hits with Images of Heaven and Babies in the Mountain. Well, in the 1970s, he did 2 albums with a guy named Duncan Brown under the name Metro. Good laid-back, kind of loungy, well, not really loungy, but just laid-back, stylish mood music. Not too unlike Brian Ferry and Roxy Music. And this is definitely a lot more like Roxy Music, Brian Ferry, and Midge Ure even. This is a 12-inch he did in 1981. Obviously, Duncan Brown had left at this point, so it's Peter Godwin and somebody else. And just a slick synth pop 12-inch. America in My Head. Good stuff. I like that. Another dance 12-inch from the mid-1980s or early 1980s is a UK band called Afraid of Mice. This is one called Intercontinental. And it's kind of horn-laden, funky, dance, new wave. Nothing too distinguishing about it. But, the kind of band that when you see the records for $1, if you like new wave from the early 80s, pick it up. Two Sevens Clash, classic album there from Culture. I never did own it before, so now I do. Good classic reggae here. Two Sevens Clash. And I've seen other copies with a yellow sleeve. This one has a red sleeve to it. All right, speaking of German music, I don't know much about this act. Tauschen Prokopetz. The album is called D.O.P. And the label on it said that it was 80s German New Wave, very German. So I was very interested in what this was all about. A good mix of kind of a synth pop, jagged guitars, New Wave herky-jerky rhythms, but all very danceable. So, I don't know, I quite liked it. And I really love the Creation label, especially the stuff they put out in the 1980s, but really I followed them through the 90s as well. And a Creation band that kind of always flew under the radar in the 1980s was the Jasmine Minks. And this is an album they did in the late 1980s called Scratch the Surface, the Jasmine Minks. Jangly guitar pop from the late 1980s. The Collage. This is a 60s harmonic pop outfit. Not too unlike Mamas and the Papas, Spanky and Our Gang, The Free Design, that kind of thing. Again, another band, if you just take a look at them, you kind of get an idea of what they sound like. Soft harmonic pop on the Smash label from the late 1960s. Here's a good one by The Dance. It's called In Lust. Good early 80s disco funk punk. Punky disco funk, if that's a good way to describe them. Bush Tetras, Delta 5, Gang of Four is another more touchstones for this group. This album called In Lust, I think it came out in '83. Female vocals, danceable stuff, but with an edge to it. Scratchy guitars and good funky bass. The Dance, In Lust. Here's a fun act from the mid-1970s called Faith, Hope, and Charity. I have a single by them called Come Back and Finish What You Started, which I always loved. So I found an album by them, and it looks like it's self-titled, and it looks like they're having a funky good time. Look at them. Faith, Hope, and Charity from 1975 on the RCA label. Now, Hazel O'Connor is a British singer who will always be dear in my heart for her 1980 film Breaking Glass and her soundtrack. I just love it. And stuff she's put out afterwards I haven't been too fond of, but you know, when I see her records around, I'll pick them up because I'll always want to hear what she's up to. So in 1980, let's look at, make sure I've got the year right here. I think it is 1985. I don't see a date, but she did this album called Smile, and it's a little slicker, a little more commercial, for lack of a better word, than Breaking Glass, but still not too bad. And then I got it for $1, and then for $1 each, somebody had dumped off some singles from the time period as well. Here's one called Don't Touch Me. Here's another one called Just Good Friends. And lastly, one called Cuts Too Deep. Hazel O'Connor. Check out that 80s hair. All right, also for $1, I got a camouflage 12-inch called Handsome. This is an import 12-inch. And if you're into things like Depeche Mode, Erasure, you know, OMD, I don't know, just synth pop with kind of a seductive, dark feel to it, Camouflage. You probably already know them for the song The Great Commandment. If you don't, check that out on YouTube. The Great Commandment's a classic. Here's one from Secret Colors. It's an album called Positive Distractions, another band who played Austin Psych Fest, U.S. psychedelic pop band. Not too much else to say about them, but if you're into dreamy psychedelic pop, Secret Colors could be right up your alley. Here's a couple 12 inches I got that are pretty recently released. This is one by ZZT. It's a combination of Zombie Nation and Tiga, two acts I greatly admire for their dance floor prowess. And this is a 12-inch called Rock the Peace. Great, great sounds there. Hard-edged synths, heavy rhythms. I don't know how else to describe it, really. Check out Tiga online, though, and Zombie Nation, if you haven't heard them before. Great examples of, you know, if I was talking about the electronic body music earlier, things like Cabaret Voltaire, DAF, Front 242, Nights Are Ebb. If that stuff had continued on in that vein, Tiga might have picked up, could kind of slide into that territory. Here's something else by a group called Walls. I don't know much about them, except they're from the UK, and it's a 12-inch called Urals. Urals. And it's kind of like a dancey My Bloody Valentine noise, drone, trancey kind of thing. I fall deeply for this kind of stuff, so it was right up my alley. The description said trippy synth melodies and a clash between heavy acid sound of DJ Pierre and the towering guitar squalls of My Bloody Valentine. That sold me right there. Again, the group is Walls, and the 12-inch is called Urals. Here's a good dance 12-inch from the UK by Lovelock. It's called Maybe Tonight. Slick dance. I don't know, if you're into modern dance, trance, like Above and Beyond and Sasha, that kind of thing, you might be into Lovelock. Italians Do It Better is a label I follow. They put out a lot of great modern dance synth music, and this is something by a group called Botan, and the record is called No Static. Italians Do It Better. There's another good band on that label called Chromatics. Check them out. The Primitives, yes, the same band that did Crash from the late 1980s. They've reformed and put out an album called Spin-O-Rama. And this is my copy from the Elephant label over in Spain, and it came out on green vinyl. Really hoping this gets a domestic release, because I'd sure love to be able to see the Primitives live. I've never caught them live before, and they're one of my favorite groups ever. All right, a few more to go through. Blue Rondo a la Turk, Latin-tinged salsa-type music from the early 1980s Britain. The lead singer was somebody who hung out at the Blitz Club a lot, the Steve Strange Blitz Club that fostered groups like Spandau Ballet, Visage, Ultravox. Well, not really Ultravox, but Visage. So he broke off, the lead singer, I think his name is Chris Williams, and formed Blue Rondo a la Turk. And they're not very dancey at all. They're more salsa Latin kind of flavor. But I quite like it. The Eiler Set. This is an album they did called The Last Match in the middle of the last decade. Think girl pop of Phil Spector mashed with maybe Mary Chain or even Velvet Underground, and you're getting into their territory of the Eiler Set. I don't think they're together anymore. And this was they did 3 albums that I know of, and this is one that I never did own by them, The Last Match by the Eiler Set. Great indie pop from, you know, the middle of the last decade. The 12-inch I found by The called Slow Emotion Replay. Never did own it, but it's got a lot of cool remixes of Dogs of Lust on it, and it comes on red vinyl. Got it for a couple bucks. How could I refuse? I love The, and I really like the song Dogs of Lust. So there were some really good remixes on there. I think one of them was by J.G. Thirlwell. Yeah, it was J.G. Thirlwell, otherwise known as Fetus. All right, just a few more things to show here. These are some records I got at concerts. One of the bands I saw not too long ago, a few months back, were White Fence, a really good psychedelic jangly pop band on record. But you catch them live, and they're a lot more loose. I don't want to say sloppy, but a lot rougher live. This is an album they did called Growing Faith. Good garagey, jangly pop. Here's another one they did called, I think it's called Gorilla. And then this is their most recent, called For the Recently Found Innocent. Really like White Fence. If you're just into jangly, melodic indie pop, check them out. And then last but not least, more jangly melodic indie pop, but this has got more of a, not much of an edge to it. They're called Literature. And this is their first album called Arab Spring. Pick this up. And then this is their most recent album called Chorus on the Slumberland label. Very reminiscent of bands like Orange Juice, The Smiths, Aztec Camera, even some of the bands on the Sarah record label you could almost apply to Literature. Just a great hooky melodies, good songwriting, great production, and great live. They reproduced it well live. I highly recommend you check out Literature if you're into good jangly guitar pop. And that, my friends, does it. That is me taking you on a tour of 2 big stacks of albums. So I hope you're all finding good records out there. Look forward to seeing your stuff on Facebook and YouTube as well. And I'll check back with you here in a month or two with, I'm sure I'll be buying more records between now and then. So until then, keep the vinyl spinning and keep finding some jewels out there. Talk to you soon.